Welcome back. NATO held a multinational exercise, Steadfast Defender 2021, in Romania and Portugal. While these exercises are meant to send a signal to Russia and China, a new country's in the mix, Belarus. The Eastern European country recently used its military to divert a commercial flight and detain a journalist, a move that caught the eye of NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg.
This just once again demonstrates the nature of the regime in Minsk, where they are willing to crack down and use outrageous actions like the force downing on that plane to crack down on democratic opposition in their own country. Therefore, the North Atlantic Council, NATO, has strongly condemned this act of the Minsk regime. We called for an immediate international independent investigation. And I also welcome the fact that NATO allies, EU and others have implemented sanctions on Belarus to make sure that Belarus is have to pay a cost for this way of acting and behaving against a civilian airline with many passengers.
Stoltenberg spoke aboard the HMS Queen Elizabeth and stopped short of linking Belarus with Russia, whose actions he also condemned.
I will not speculate about the role of Russia, except for saying that we have seen a pattern of behavior also from Russia over the last years, where they have been willing to use poisoning, cyber attacks, attempted coups against, for instance, Montenegro. So we have seen a pattern of behavior which is of great concern also when it comes to Russia.
Russian President Vladimir Putin hosted Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko on his yacht off the coast of Sochi while the exercise took place. A total of 11 NATO partner countries took part in Steadfast Defender 2021, and it had a notable push in maritime operations with more than 150 flights. There were 18 F-35B Lightnings, including 10 from the United States Marine Corps. NATO uses these exercises to ensure partner troops and emerging technologies work together while sending a message to potential adversaries.
It's important for NATO to deliver these exercises because it's an absolute demonstration of our capability and our ability to integrate with our closest allies across NATO. So you have to do that in exercises to have the confidence that everything works together seamlessly as we would hope and expect come a time of war or tension where we'd want to deliver the exercise.
It's important for the U.S. to be involved in NATO exercises and working with our allies across the Atlantic, because as the old Afghan proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. We're going to go much further if we work together as allies than if any one of us were to work individually. And so our ironclad relationship with NATO and all of our NATO allies is really important to the United States.
And some more defense industry headlines. South Korea can now develop ballistic missiles capable of reaching targets far beyond the Korean peninsula, following the United States' approval to lift a 42-year-old restriction on its allies' missile development program. South Korean and U.S. leaders announced the termination of the missile guidelines imposed on Seoul in 1979. At the time, South Korea wanted to acquire American technology to develop its own missiles, and in return, the Asian nation agreed to limit the range of its missiles to 180 kilometers with a maximum payload of 500 kilograms. In the face of increasing threats from North Korea, the guidelines have been revised 4 times. Without the restrictions on missile ranges, observers believe South Korea is likely to prioritize the development of intermediate-range ballistic missiles with a maximum range of 1,000 to 5,000 kilometers, capable of reaching targets beyond the Korean peninsula. The Air Force Research Laboratory's Space Vehicles Directorate recently opened a space research and development lab at Kirtland Air Force Base in New Mexico. The $12.8 million Space Warfighting Operations Research and Development, or SWORD Lab, will be used to track objects in orbit, advance satellite cybersecurity, and develop autonomous capabilities to help space vehicles avoid each other and space debris. That's according to Colonel Eric Felt, the head of AFRL's Space Vehicles Directorate. The 26,000 square foot facility will serve as the home of 65 personnel from AFRL's Space Control Branch. Malaysia says China has sent more than a dozen military transport aircraft on May 31 to the vicinity of disputed shoals in the South China Sea. Those shoals are administered by Malaysia, which scrambled a fighter jet to investigate. The Royal Malaysian Air Force said in a news release that more than a dozen Chinese aircraft approached within 69 miles of Malaysia's coast. The Chinese force approached in a, quote, tactical formation and was first detected by an air defense radar in eastern Malaysia on May 31st. The aircraft failed to respond to several attempts by Malaysian air traffic controllers to contact them, after which the Malaysian Air Force scrambled a jet to intercept and identify them. The flight path of the Chinese aircraft suggests they were likely conducting a long-range airlift surge exercise. China's embassy in Malaysia told Singapore's Channel News Asia that the aircraft were conducting overflights in accordance with international law, stressing that they did not enter Malaysia's territorial airspace. When we come back, Navy Federal Credit Union personal finance expert Jeanette Mack offers her latest tips. And later, we break down the details of the Biden administration's first defense budget.